This was me 11 months ago, working 80 hours a week, stressed out of my mind, and drowning in chaos while my business, well, it was kind of becoming a nightmare. Fast forward to today, I run a 7-figure business working just 30 hours a week with everything running smoothly on autopilot. This way I can feel my purpose, generate more profit, and recharge my creativity and vision with time for play. And if you're wondering what's the difference, well, it's what I call the Freedom Framework. And today I'm going to show you my 5-step Freedom Framework, which has helped over 200 businesses escape chaos and build real freedom. And this is the exact framework which has taken my clients from stressed out, overwhelmed, to generating consistent 6 and 7 figures with just a small, efficient team. But first, let me tell you something that most experts won't. Working harder isn't the answer. In fact, that's the advice which is probably keeping you stuck. Because let me ask you this, would you build your dream home without a blueprint? Would you just grab a hammer and hope it all works out one day? Of course not, because that'd be pretty insane, right? Because imagine this, you start laying the foundation, but it's too small. You add the walls and windows, but they don't match up. Your plumbing and electrical wires, well, they go nowhere. And one day you step back and you realize, holy crap, I've built a disaster. Nothing works, nothing fits, it's all a mismatch. And fixing this mess is gonna take twice as long and it's gonna cost twice as much. But here's the crazy part. This is exactly how most founders build their businesses. They hire random people without clear roles. They add systems and tools that actually don't connect. They create unnecessary SOPs that lead nowhere. And worst of all, they follow random marketing tactics that don't actually align with their vision. Then one day, they look at their business and realize they've actually built a monster that barely functions. It's cash hungry and time poor. And I learned this lesson the hard way because last year, I launched a new done-for-you offer. On paper, it was a huge success. We enrolled 35 new clients in just 45 days, adding well over $168,000 in monthly recurring revenue. But behind the scenes, it was pure chaos. The onboarding process, it was breaking down. Client expectation issues were arising everywhere. There were credit card bounces from clients that we didn't even plan for. And worst of all, I had to spend $50,000 on emergency hires that didn't even help me out. It got so bad that I had to send my sales team on vacation to Costa Rica so we could pause sales for a little bit while my fulfillment team and I rebuilt our entire system from the ground up. Because I knew the only way to overcome this would be to build again with intention rather than hoping systems, tools, and teams magically came together and just worked. Because the hard lesson that I learned is when you skip the Freedom Framework, you set yourself up for 3 major nightmares. One, which is misaligned teams. You hire people without a clear role or purpose, hoping they'll figure out something useful to do. And instead of creating leverage for you, they add just more stress and confusion. Number 2 is misaligned systems. You keep adding tools and processes as you go along, only to realize that they actually don't integrate or scale. Now, instead of solving problems, they're actually causing them. And number 3, it's a misaligned vision. The business grows, sure, I get it, but not in the direction you wanted. You feel trapped in a machine you've accidentally built, and due to sunk cost bias, you choose to remain stuck. But my friend, here's the good news. It doesn't have to be this way. And here's my 5-step Freedom Framework to actually help you out. So let's go through it step by step. Now, step number 1 is really to map the machine, which is what is called your vision and the scale that you're really planning for. In this step, what I want you to do is to define what exactly are you building and create this high-level map of all the core stages in your business. And I'm going to explain all of this in just a second because this is going to be a very step-by-step follow along as you go. So the goal of this is to have a clear visualization of how your business generates and serves clients, customers, or users. So here's a quote from Thomas Watson, the founder of IBM. And he has this very famous quote that extremely inspired me, which is, IBM is what it is today for 3 special reasons. The first is that at the very beginning, I had a clear picture of what the company would look like when it was finally done. You might say I had a model in my mind of what it would look like. The dream, my vision, was in place. The second reason was that once I had that picture, I then asked myself how a company which looked like that would have to act. I then created a picture of how IBM would act when it was finally done. The third reason IBM has been so successful was that once I had a picture of how IBM would look like when the dream was in place and how such a company would have to act, I then realized that unless we began to act that way from the very beginning, we would never get there. In other words, I realized that for IBM to become a great company, it would have to act like a great company long before it ever became one. So this is extremely inspiring, and you can see how really large founders of amazing companies think, right? It's like if I am trying to build something, I have to have a crystal clear picture of what is it I am building. Going back to the analogy of building a home, just like you wouldn't try to build your dream home without a blueprint, the same thing applies to building your dream business, which is going to establish the foundation of your vision coming to life. So with that being said, I want to also ask you, what is it that you're building? Are you building this skyscraper or are you building a home? Now, there's no judgment, nothing like whatever you want to build, that's within your heart, that's your calling. But be very clear. Do you want a skyscraper or do you want a home? Because the thing is, how you build a skyscraper is going to be very different than how you build a home. The tools are going to be different. The people you hire are going to be different. The blueprint is definitely different. And of course, the permits, the foundation is going to be different. Now, one thing I notice with founders is sometimes we make the mistake of thinking that, you know what, I actually really want to build this skyscraper someday, but due to working capital or due to a lack of belief right now in my abilities or my current team, I am just gonna settle for this home. And we think that, you know what, let's just build this home right here, right? And over time, I'm going to grow incrementally, which is kind of crazy because if you think about it, how are you gonna take a house and then start building another layer on top of this and then another layer and then someday become a skyscraper? If you know anything about foundations and architecture, like that is a logical fallacy. Like that would never come to life. So be very clear about what is it that you're building. And from day one, we have to build that foundation. Because the thing is, the way you build $1 million business or a $3 million business versus 10, 30, $100 million business is significantly different. It's not about this incremental, like we don't hit 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, and then next thing you know, we've incrementally worked our way across the board and now we're at 10 or 50 or 100 million. No, the foundation from day one has to be different. So again, get very clear of what your business is going to look like once it's all finished and done. So that kind of brings us to the next stage, right? Now that we have clarity about what is it that we're building, I want you to kind of map out exactly from start to finish, how is a lead generated? How is a sale made? How are your clients, customers, users, or members delivered on the service that they're purchasing? And how are they also delighted, right? All of these things are gonna matter. Now, you probably already have certain processes that you're using for this entire flow. I want you to just write down the bird's eye view of the different stages. For example, if you are using meta ads to attract, if you're using content, awesome. Then it goes into a funnel. From there, it goes into a sales call. From the sales call, we've got an onboarding process. We do our service delivery. We have backend sales here. We ask them for referrals and reviews. Whatever your process kind of looks like, jot it down. The key over here is we don't need to be detailed just yet. We don't need to break this down. Figure it all out from start to finish. Once we have this, right, I want you to ask yourself these key questions, which is, what are you really building? As we talked about, are you building a skyscraper or are you building a family home? Either way, there is no right or wrong answer. And what happens from generating lead to building a repeat client, customer, or member, like I have asked you right here. And what scale are you actually planning for? Like I said, the logical fallacy is you really want this, but then you're kind of building this right now. And will your current foundation support your ultimate vision? And what system needs to be enterprise grade from day one? You have to really answer those questions. And some of the key principles you need to keep in mind is build the right foundation for your ultimate vision, not your current reality or level of belief. Clarity beats complexity. Keep it as simple as possible. Ask yourself if this is truly needed. When I am mapping everything out in my business, I really ask myself, why is this necessary? How could we remove it? What would happen if I actually remove it? And I really have to take a step back because oftentimes we keep adding different stages, different nuts and bolts within our business that really doesn't add a lot of value, yet it bogs the entire machine down. So be skeptical. It's like you're taking your existing company and putting a fresh set of eyes on it. And for a second, I want you to think like an outside consultant rather than the founder of your company. And then ask yourself, do I really need it or should I trash it? And if I do trash it, what's gonna happen? And future-proof everything. This is a mantra that I live by, which is, can it, will it be able to handle 10x the number of clients or team members? Because you want to future-proof everything. Because if you are going to build something incredible and it does catch fire, like, will it be able to handle 10x the number of clients or team members? If yes, then you've got an incredible machine. If no, there are certain parts that you need to make enterprise grade from day one. Because again, we want to build for success, not just what our current needs and demands are. Some of the pitfalls that I've encountered, which is building for current size or working capital instead of future scale. We've already beat that to death. Overcomplicating the core stages by adding unnecessary parts, right? And then forgetting key revenue streams or client journey touch points. You want to make sure you map it all out. If there's additional things that's happening, always map it out. And again, I'm providing a very overly simplified map of a business. Your business is going to look extremely different than what I have done right here for illustrative and example purposes. Now, I also like to define done when, because otherwise sometimes we could spend an eternity on this exercise and never know, are we done? Can I move on to the next step or not? So done when, you can explain your entire business flow visually, you have clarity on the scale you're building for, and you have mapped out all revenue streams and core stages clearly. Once you have done that, we're gonna move on to step number 2. And step number 2 is what I call breakdown stages. This is called process mapping, right? We want to deconstruct all the core stages into specific processes. And as we're going along, you also want to identify what is proven, like what process in your business is actually proven versus what are you just winging it. And I want you to have a detailed list of every process under each stage needed to keep the business running smoothly, efficiently. Now, again, just for the purposes of this exercise, what I've done is I've taken Meta Ads, and I know Meta Ads extremely well. And so, for example, for Meta Ads, in my business, we have a strategy process that we go through. Then we go to research and planning. Then after that, we've identified what are the concepts, the hooks, the angles we're going after. We send it to copywriting. And after copywriting, and sometimes this is a simultaneous process, we will have the ads creative production. It will go to media buying. Then we have our process for how are we analyzing and optimizing based on the data that we are collecting. And then of course, this entire thing starts all the way back up again. And this is a cycle that we do on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, right? And then of course, things will flow to a funnel because our leads are getting flowed into a funnel. Now, if somebody is to join my team and they're like, well, Mahmoud, what's the steps we are supposed to take to create the funnel? Well, great question. We actually have it mapped out. We're gonna work on the offer first. It will go to copywriting. It will go to asset creation. We'll create the funnel, the landing pages, the additional pages needed. Then we'll set up the email and SMS and any other tech. We will also have this analysis and optimization. And all of this, again, we use to have the feedback for the next round. Again, this is just illustrative purposes, but you need to have something like this already built out, and you want to have it for every stage of your business. And if anything doesn't make sense, or you're like, you know what, I actually don't have any set processes. I don't even understand what the process needs to look like. Like if you have no idea that this is a process for Meta Ads, no worries. Just put a question mark next to the thing that you're kind of worried about or you lack clarity on, right? Just like this. So that way you can come back to it and try to fill those knowledge gaps. For example, content is a process that we're building out right now inside my company. And I am not inherently a content expert, but what I am doing is working with outside consultants and coaches to fill my knowledge gap. And as we go along, we are creating our process for content creation, and we're just mapping out the big stages and processes that it kind of flows through. And so this is what you want to do, right? You want to make sure you fill up all the knowledge gaps rather than winging it. So the key questions you want to ask yourself is, what specific process happens in each stage? Which processes are proven versus improvised or still being figured out? And you have to be very honest about this, right? It's totally fine if you are starting off as an early stage founder and you don't have a lot of clarity on every single stage, every single process. That's totally cool. But over time, what you'd want to do is find those outside experts that can come in and fill up those knowledge gaps. This way, you have a robust machine that you're building rather than just continuing to wing it, because ultimately your business will suffer. Now, you also want to ask yourself what problems keep recurring due to having no systems. For example, if we knew okay, the lifeblood of our business is Meta Ads, because this is what's driving revenue, and we have no process in place and we're just kind of throwing random ads together, just random creatives, random copy, then of course you want to come address this, because this is going to be a major problem for you. And again, where do you need external expertise? Some of the key principles you want to keep in mind is every recurring process or problem needs a systematic solution. This way there are no brand new challenges for you to solve. You've already anticipated every little thing that's going to happen within your business. You're trying to imagine this almost like a factory production line. Like if I am building a car, what's happening at the beginning of the factory production line so that at the end of that line, I get this finished, beautiful, ready to drive vehicle. So I also want you to think in processes, not just tasks, and document what actually happens, not what you think should happen. Oftentimes, we add a lot of junk and bloat into our processes, thinking well, this would be really cool if we did that. It'd be really awesome if we were optimizing the entire journey this way. But again, what is actually happening right now? And if you've worked with an outside coach or consultant and they said, you need to add this into your process, awesome, do that. But again, don't speculate. I also want you to consider P. This is something that we use internally at my company, which is we want to account for PEA, which is planning, execution, and analysis. So what I've found over time is every stage, every process needs to go through this planning, this execution and analysis, so we can take that feedback and iterate and improve over time. So when you're drawing out your map, you want to make sure you have that kind of accounted for, P. Some of the pitfalls are assuming all current processes work perfectly and then not stepping back and stripping away unnecessary complexity by removing processes. You also, if you're not identifying knowledge gaps and seeking to fill it immediately. And the worst of all is keeping broken promises, because that's how we've always done it. Ooh, this makes me cringe when I see founders do that. I really hope you're not like one of those founders hey, this is how we've always done it, so we're going to just keep doing it. You always want to be a skeptic of your current business and always ask yourself, is this really adding value or is this creating waste? Can we remove this? That has to be your mindset as you're building this entire thing out. Now, this is done when every process is mapped clearly under each stage, all knowledge gaps are clearly marked and set a plan to fill it, and recurring problems are identified and solved, right? So knowledge gaps, like I said over here, I put a question mark in terms of the stages or process that I'm I have no clue how to do this, but I'm gonna find somebody to teach me. Cool, this brings us to step number 3, which is document key steps. This is basically systems building. So now that we have the different processes, right? Like this right here, this is a process, this is a process. I want you to create the high level action steps for each process. Also, what are the relevant deliverables and KPIs for each process? This way, we have the detailed step of every process under each stage needed to keep the business running. And I'm going to give you just one example, which is for copywriting. The high-level bird's eye view action items that we take in my business, which is basically we're going to open up the avatar research doc. And if needed, then yes, we will update that doc, right? Then we will create 5 new ad concepts using our proven templates that have historically worked for us. And we're going to create 3 based on pleasure, and then we're going to create 2 copy based on pain or problem. And then we will, let's say, send it to CMO for review. This way, we have basically the action steps that I talked about right here. We also have the deliverables, the clear deliverables that I need. And over time, what I will do, this is a bonus. For the purposes of this video, you do not have to worry about this. I will actually link an SOP that has an even more detailed version of how we are supposed to do this. But again, my friend, for the purposes of this video, please do not worry about SOPs. I don't want you to create an SOP just yet. It's going to be a total waste of your time. I want you to go through and just start documenting all the different action steps that you need to do. So for creative production, what's step number 1? What's step 2? What's 3, 4, 5, whatever the different steps are. Mark it down. Over time, you're going to learn a lot of different things. When I was just talking about content for an example, I learned that I need to record the long form. Then I also learned that, oh, you know what? As I am recording the long form, I need to record a short form promo for this long form. Then I also realized, you know what? Our thumbnail designer wants me to take photos for the thumb. He wants a high quality, high res photo. So he's not just working off of the video screenshots. And then this will get added into my content process. So you're going to learn a lot of things as you go along. But what happens is if you don't document the new steps that you're realizing, every time you do that process, it becomes a surprise. Like, I knew I should have done that. I totally forgot. Holy crap. Like, next time I'll try to remember it. But if you don't jot it down, next time, chances are you're going to forget it again. And this, for some reason, if you keep doing this, it's going to increase your cognitive load for no freaking reason. And each time it's a new decision, it's a new way of fatiguing yourself out. And you start to actually hate this process within your business when it should be really place of fulfillment and joy if you just document all the things that you're doing. So moving along, the key questions you want to ask yourself is, could someone smart understand what's needed to be done without asking questions, right? Like any smart person can understand recording long form, recording short form, taking photos. Like, okay, bird's eye view, I totally get it. Then some questions might arise like, well, for long form, how are we scripting? You know, how are we recording? The production setup, and you get it, right? But for those, we will have a different process that we will create to answer those questions. Now, you also want to ask yourself what decisions can be systematized and how, because I want you to kind of think about it like a software programmer, and we want to create kind of decision trees. If yes, great, we branch out here. We do X action. And then if no, we want to come down here, we take Y action. And then we keep building it like this. Here, boom, boom. So then there is no decision fatigue. There is no reason for your team member to come to you and be like, well, this happened, what do I do? Because you have removed all the different unique situations because you've accounted for that in advance. And will different unique situations come up? Yes, absolutely. But just like I said, if you keep documenting it and providing answers for it, you don't have to keep telling your team members that we handle it this way. And what happens is you don't become the bottleneck because all of this knowledge isn't just stored in your head and you become the only person that knows how to deal with this, or you have to provide authorization in order to act on it. It's already mapped out and people have this clear roadmap to follow. And you also want to basically ask yourself, what are the current bottlenecks and how can you solve them? And we basically want to systematize decisions to reduce cognitive load, and we want to build processes that scale with time. Like I said, 10x use that 10x rule. Can we handle 10x the number of users, clients, customers? Can we handle 10x the number of team members working on this? Do not turn it into SOP just yet, please. Just note the high-level action steps. And pitfalls is creating overly complex systems and trying to perfect it rather than document it. And then missing decision points. And this is kind of what I meant by decision points. You want to account for that. So let's define done when, which is clear action steps are created for each process and decision points are identified and instructed on, and new team members could understand and follow along. Cool, we're gonna move to step number 4, which is design the roles. This, my friend, is your team structure. So I want you to start defining clear roles based on the processes you need people to take ownership of. If you're watching this, chances are you already have a team. You might have all the processes already being taken care of. Maybe they're being taken care of amazingly, or they're being done poorly, whatever it is. For a second, I want you to think as if you have no team member. We're starting again from a blank slate because we want to ensure we're building the right structure, okay? So going back to the worksheet, I want you to understand that we don't want to hire to just help you out or help you generate more revenue. This is something that I see founders make a huge mistake with, because there's this common misconception that we should build an org chart. That is a mistake. You should not be building an org chart. You should be mapping out the machine and then figuring out who do you need to take different processes and steps off your plate. What would that role be called? Let's now hire people for that role, okay? That way it is a actual need inside of your business, not just a nice to have hire. And I want you to also remove bloat from your current payroll if they don't serve a process. I know that is something no founder wants to hear, but at the end of the day, if somebody isn't adding value to the business, you are only hurting yourself, your team members who are A players, and the future vision of the business that you're building. So the goal is you need to be knowing why you're hiring, what processes they will handle, and how you will measure their success. So going along with this example, let's just say very quickly, right? This is kind of the team structure you're going to need. And again, your company, your business is going to look extremely different than this extremely oversimplified version of a business that I'm presenting. But let's just say we had head of marketing, then we have the media buyer. You also want to put in the name of the person that's handling this. And as you're starting off, in the kind of the early to mid stages, you might have one person handling different roles, which is totally fine. Like me, I love marketing. I would never want to give that up. I also love media buying. I love copywriting. Like this is something I want to keep doing for as long as I can, because that is my zone of genius. And that is what my purpose, my passion is around, right? So let's just say I realize, you know what? I need a tech support to help out with certain process, like over here with the funnel creation right here, right? Then I'll just put a pin over here and say like, great, who's the tech support? I don't have one. That's always falling on me. Let's plan to hire that person. Let's say I'm also planning that, you know what, we need an additional sales rep. Let's just put a pin on it and we're gonna plan to hire this person. So you wanna go through and figure out, okay, who is needed for what? What process are they taking ownership of based on the map that I have created? Now, the key questions I always ask is who owns each process and each task and deliverable and KPI under each process? There needs to be a clearly defined owner, a team member that is in charge of this. And what proven steps will they follow? If you don't have the proven steps, then make sure you work with somebody from the outside to give you those steps. And what should the end result look like? When the job is done, how do you measure that it was done well? Like if you don't know if they're supposed to build you the Eiffel Tower or the White House, like how are you going to judge their success? And how long should it take from start to finish? Ideally, you've done this task a few times yourself, so you know exactly how to time it. And what does success look like in this role? Once you've answered these questions, let's kind of move along to the key principles. You want to always hire for specific processes, not just general help. Because what happens is, if you just hire for general help, like you're like, oh, I just need more bodies on my team. Well, you're gonna have people come onto your team. They're just gonna be like, do you know what to do? I don't know. They didn't tell me what I'm supposed to do. And they're just gonna clock in, clock out, waste time, drain your funds, drain your energy, you're going to feel bad that you've got somebody on your team that's not actually being productive, then you're leaving more higher leverage activities and trying to wonder, well, I hired John. What is John supposed to do? Hey, John, can you just take care of this? Can you just be busy for a little while? And that is a way to create chaos, not control. So that, my friend, you don't want to do. Don't ever fall into the trap of, let's just hire people and tell them, like, do something useful, make me more money, solve this problem, be useful. That is a very big pitfall. You want to hire to basically offload your plate once you have a proven process, and every process should have a clear owner, and design roles around processes that are actually needed, not people you want to keep. I know this because I've made this mistake, which is like when you're first starting off and you've got certain team members that have been here from day one, you feel extremely loyal because they have supported the mission, vision, and the principles of the business. And it hurts to let them go, to say that, you know what, I realize that you are no longer serving a process inside of this business, and it is no longer a needed part to serve the higher, bigger mission that I'm going after. And sometimes you want to keep these people around, but again, they don't add any value. They just create more waste. The pitfall is if somebody doesn't know what they should be doing, it is your fault. As the founder, everything is your fault. You have to take ownership. It hurts. I know, I get it. I've been there, but it is your baby. You are creating. You are the architect. You are the creator of this entire machine. So if something breaks down, it is on you. And sometimes, you may have to get rid of people. Like I said, you have to get rid of bloat. One thing that I will say is don't assign the person another role unless they have clear expertise in that area. So you might realize Susie is no longer needed on our team because of whatever reason. Do not try to assign Susie another role unless she is a clear expert at that. I have made that mistake. Trust me, it doesn't work out with Susie. And even then, you should interview outside candidates before you switch them to that role. If you're like, you know what, I really want to keep Susie because I feel like she's going to be an expert and she's going to take this process and run really well with it, well, still hire outside candidates and see how Susie kind of ranks with the outside candidates. If she is still the clear winner, awesome, let's keep her. If not, sorry, Susie, you've got to go. And this will be done when every process has a clear winner, the role boundaries are clearly established. There should be no weird discrepancies between, well, who's the media buyer? Who's in charge of this? Who's in charge of that? Everything should be defined. We also have success metrics and KPIs established, and the handoff points are documented. We know exactly how it's going from creative to media buying to analysis and so on and so forth. And every person on your team has a role, and there is no bloat. Every person on your team has a role. They have a clearly defined role, and there is no bloat. There is no person standing around and wondering, well, what should I do today? If that is happening, you have majorly screwed up. Now, let's go to the final step, which is step number 5. We want to profile and hire. This is the recruitment process. So based on the team structure that we are creating, we want to create role profiles. We basically want to reverse engineer who is it that we need. What are the skill sets, the mindsets, the traits of this person in order to take ownership of this process inside the machine that we are building? And we also want to have clear training and improvement systems before we hire them, okay? So again, you want to know the traits, you want to know how you're going to attract them and how you're going to train them. So let's get into this, right? Of course, the team structure that you're going to have is going to be very different than the overly simplified team structure that I have, right? But here is some general advice and feedback for you based on what I've learned from the trenches. So quick tip is hire one person at a time unless you have different department heads who can hire their own direct reports. This is extremely key. You don't want to be hiring multiple roles at the same time because they are all going to have a certain level of time, energy, and commitment required to train them, ramp them, and all of that good stuff. Usually what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with one role, one team member, have them onboarded, trained, ramped up to speed, and then move to the next hire. And when I'm planning out my hire, I will always start with the cheapest, lowest leverage, most routine process. And these are going to be processes with low risk. For example, if I'm hiring something super minimal, like a thumbnail designer, right? There is no way that they could screw it up and ruin the future of my business. At worst, it's like, yeah, I don't like it. Let's just move on. But if something is critical, like a CMO who is going to take the company in a totally different direction, then I really want to sit down and contemplate that hire. And that has to be an extremely important hire because that person could really blow money, like tens of thousands of dollars every single month. But most importantly, they could be sending out the wrong marketing message in the market and ruining the brand and the reputation of my business. And it could be completely misaligned with the vision that I have. So the reason I also start with the cheapest, lowest leverage hires first is because it frees up time for me to now think about the more expensive, high leverage, expertise-based hires, right? Because these are high risk, like I said. And what I like to do is I like to separate it out into knowledge workers versus routine workers. With routine workers, the interview process isn't that extensive. We'll do 5 to 10 different candidates and interviews, and we're going to go ahead with the best ones. But then for people that are knowledge workers and there's a significant risk if they fail, we will take our time. We will be very slow, very patient. We're going to scrutinize every single detail. So keep that in mind, because if you are still bogged down with the very low leverage activities, then you don't have the time and the bandwidth and the space to take your time with the knowledge workers who are high risk hires, right? So this is why you want to free up your time as much as possible. And usually your chief of staff or executive assistant or a department head can be hiring the routine workers, and you don't need to approve this. Like, I trust my chief of staff for her to approve and hire whoever she sees fit as long as they're routine workers. And I have a very clear kind of part and role that I play when hiring knowledge workers. And I'm going to have the final say. I have to personally approve this hire. What I will also say is, can you do a test project before you commit to a full hire, right? Because it is definitely expensive. It is definitely a lot of obligation and commitment if you get somebody on salary. So you want to just figure out, like, can you do a test before you commit to them? And you can pay them if needed. A lot of the times in different roles, people will be willing to do sample work for free. And I'm not saying that you need to exploit them. And in order to reduce my feelings of exploiting them, I actually give everybody a sample project that I will never use. And it's not like I'm trying to milk their time and talent. It's like, hey, everybody gets this exact same project and we will never use this project. It's just a test. That way it's also fair. Now, even if you have to pay them, it's going to be cheaper than a wrong hire. And a lot of us as founders, we've made those wrong hires and we know how expensive it is, not only in terms of time, energy, and money, but also that kind of the mental drain and the frustration it builds inside of the team. And if you can do a test project, what I'm going to say is test 3 to 5 of the best candidates and then select the best one. And if possible, hire 2 candidates at the same time, because you have to understand that some people just won't work out, no matter how amazing they seemed in the interview process or how amazing their sample work was. For whatever reason, they're not going to work out. So you want to anticipate this. So you haven't wasted 2 to 3 months with somebody and then realized, oh crap, I'm back at square one because they didn't work out. Now, you might also be wondering, like, well, not all roles could be doing a test project. Well, yes, you definitely can. For example, when we had the hiring process for our copywriter, we had a bunch of copywriters send in a sample project that we had them all create. For video editors, same thing. For our media buyers, we can do the exact same thing because we can assign them ad accounts, each of them, give them testing budgets, give them the clear measurable KPIs that they're trying to meet or exceed, and then if needed, pay them for a week and see who's giving us the best results. And then we are going to keep the best person and we're going to hire them and we're going to cut the rest. So again, you can be strategic and take this exact same process and hiring strategy. Now, the key questions you want to ask is, what exact skills and traits are needed? Because you've already mapped out the processes right here, right? In step 4 and step 3, you know exactly what is the type of person you need on your team. What is their psychographic profile? I will always sit down and try to think from my experience who was the best, let's say, salesperson on my team and who was the worst. What were the differences? And I will have a very black and white picture of who I want and who I don't want. And if I don't know this answer, I will reach out within my network of founders and ask, hey, you clearly have hired a lot of sales reps. Can you tell me who are the best and who are the worst? And then I will create this psychographic profile based on this person. Then I'm going to actually create the job description to try to attract that person and to repel the person that I don't want. Then I will try to create interview questions which let me know, do I have this person on the interview or not? Because I'm no longer looking at resumes. I don't care what your education was. I don't really care who you worked with in the past. I don't care if you speak well, if you interview well. What I'm looking for is I have my preset scorecard that I'm looking at. Do you match that? Do you match the psychographic profile that I'm looking for? If yes, awesome. If not, I don't really care. So all candidates inside of my business go through this very crystal clear scoring system. You also need to understand, like, how are you training them and who is in charge of training them? And then what does their first 30 days look like? Please do not just hire somebody and be like, great, awesome, problem solved, make me tons of money, solve all my problems, go build my business. No, my friend, you still need to train them. And you have to understand what is their success or failure metrics and what's the KPI for them staying on the team. And what resources do they need to succeed? So the key principles to keep in mind is hire for process execution first. And no matter how much of a genius they are, they should operate on proven process first. This is a very, very crucial mistake that I have made myself as well. Somebody seems amazing, like, oh my gosh, I have found the Einstein of media buying, of marketing, of sales. They can come in and revamp this entire thing. Let me give them the reins. Let them take charge, the leadership of this thing. No, do not do that, because you, as the founder or whoever was the department head, has a lot of data. We know for a fact what works with our avatar and what doesn't work. Let them come in, follow the proven processes, hit those benchmarks, prove themselves. Then in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, they can take those proven processes and iterate and improve them. But don't expect them and do not allow them to come in from day one and then come reshape everything because they've got this genius idea or they worked at a similar company and they help them make X million. Like, please do not do that, because that is a recipe for disaster, because it could work out or it couldn't. But let them prove themselves first, and then they can have the freedom and the luxury of doing such. And also have that clear success and failure metrics, because I want you to know when to keep or cut. I want you to be ruthless, kind of like a media buyer. You need to know when to turn off an ad set, when to keep it, let it running. What's the time frame you're evaluating it on? What are you going to tolerate? What are you not going to tolerate? If you have this beforehand, it is no longer an emotional decision. It is basically just data and numbers. And some of the pitfalls are hiring without clear proven processes. If you don't have a clear proven process, you need a consultant. You do not need a team member. You need an expert to come tell you what to do. You do not need to just hire people. And please do not expect innovation before mastery. They need to be mastering your proven process before they're allowed to innovate. And then, of course, if you have no clear success or failure metrics, this is bad, because like, how are you measuring if they're doing good or bad? Because they could be doing amazing and you're like, well, I always feel like they should be doing better. Or they could be absolutely horrible and you love their personality and you're like, well, I love John. He's such an amazing guy. I love having him on the team. Like, no. Don't be like that. You also cannot be recruiting and hiring when you're desperate. I like to now anticipate demand and hire 30 to 60 days early, because I also know that this person needs time to ramp up to speed. And I don't want to be in the middle of a shitstorm when I'm hiring, because I'm going to be desperate. I'm just going to want butts on seats. And that's the worst time to hire. It's kind of like what they say. You want to plant the seed before you need the fruit. So anticipate this. This is what amazing founders are going to do. And then if you have no training or improvement protocol, that's going to be horrible. And what I want you to do is basically show the team member how to update the process after mastery. For example, if I am, let's say, hiring somebody to take care of media buying, I want them to take ownership of this process and to make it better over time as different strategies change, as the tactics change, and whatever they realize, Their knowledge needs to be captured inside of this process. Otherwise, if they leave, you are kind of screwed because they were your rock star and nobody knows what was in Tom's head. So you need to have Tom fill this out while Tom is still on the team, because God forbid if something happens to Tom or Tom decides to leave, you're kind of screwed and you're back to square one. So we're gonna say that this is done when clear profiles are created and we have reverse engineered how to attract, interview, and select them, because we know exactly who we're going for, what are the metrics, and the training protocol has been established. All right, my friend, thank you for making it along this far. We're gonna go over kind of a checklist and you can follow this along. So step one, map the machine. You wanna decide exactly what's going on here. Step number two is breaking it down into stages. We already talked about all of this. Step number three is we document all the different steps, and then we design the role to fulfill on the different steps and processes which are under different stages which serve the machine that we are building, right? And then finally, we go try to hire people rather than just hiring people willy-nilly. And the final check is, could somebody run your business using this blueprint? It should be like, even if something happened to you or you went on a 3-month vacation, the company would still run without your input. And all processes need to be documented. And is every process, task, deliverable, KPI owned? Are there knowledge gaps marked? And will these systems scale with your vision? Can it handle 10x the number of team members or clients or users? The thing, what you want to remember is you're not just building a business, you're building your freedom and bringing your vision to life. So if you take the time to do this right, you're going to be creating that vision into reality. But without this blueprint, you're building a trap, which is going to drain time, energy, and money. Because again, like I said, now you hire, let's say right here, Tom, and Tom is doing this process with this step, which is under a different stage inside of your business, which serves the vision that you have for your company. And so you can get this trophy of money, impact, scale, whatever you want to call it. But the worst way to do it is to just get Tom on the team and say, Tom, can you please help me make money? This is the worst thing. So do not do that. Here's the truth. Every successful business is built twice. First on paper, just like this, then in reality. When you follow the freedom framework, you build with a ton of intention because your team now knows exactly what to do. Your systems work together and your vision becomes reality. When you don't, you're just hoping things work out. And as we've already discussed, that's definitely a recipe for disaster. So the choice is yours. You can keep building blindly like most founders do, or you can build with intention using the freedom framework and create a business which fuels you financially, emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. The choice is yours. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel and I'll see you in the next video.